In episode 5, as the group from Mechanical tries to make their way back home, Sims heads home himself, and he tells his wife exactly what happened, and her big concern is whether or not this could be traced back to Sims. He doesn't really see how it could, but as they're discussing this, their son walks in and says, "Hey, there's a man in our kitchen." And that man is Bernard, who had overheard their conversation. So he knows that Sims is telling his wife everything. He also knows that Sims was the one who put people up to the idea that Judge Meadows should be impeached. In Bernard's opinion, that kind of triggered everything that went down. Bernard having to poison Judge Meadows, which was something he didn't really want to do, but in his mind, it'll end up working out best for the silo. He, however, is so upset about having to do this that he needs someone to blame, and Sims is that guy. So he tells Sims, "I can't trust you anymore, and you're definitely not going to be my shadow. What I am going to do is I'm going to make you the judge because you're far too valuable to the silo." And then he swears Sims in. But just like with Meadows, being named judge is kind of just a title. In reality, Bernard is calling the shots, and he just took away Sims' power in a lot of ways. With Sims taking the judge job, there's an opening for Sims' old job, the head of IT security. And a person named Rick Admonson is going to take that. Rick's first job is to find the group from Mechanical, ASAP, but he's having a hard time doing that. There's bounties out there, and there are raiders dressed as civilians. They're eventually going to get found. It's just a matter of when it happens. The news, though, of the power change reaches Billings and Hank in the Down Deep. And Billings, for one, is shocked. Hank is also very surprised when he finds out that Meadows was killed, allegedly, by his friends. He just doesn't see how that could be possible. Hank mentions how this is ironic, being a sheriff's deputy and having to hunt his friends. And that's when Paul says, yeah, it's about as ironic as breaking the pact that you have to uphold. And what he means by that is he has the syndrome. He's admitting to Hank this, and Hank doesn't really care. He just asks if Sims knows, and Billings says, yeah, he knows, and he made an exception, but now that he's judge, he's just not sure. And you can tell it's really bothering him. So Hank gets the conversation back to what the hell's going on in the Down Deep. They get their first lead on Patrick when they're in the cafeteria and they see a woman that is taking a meal after working a long shift in the cafeteria. To Hank, that's fishy. The fact that she was just surrounded by all that food for hours and she's just taking it home. And this particular woman happens to be the niece of Patrick. They're able to convince her to give up Patrick's location. And he was hiding right behind the sign, that little hole that would eventually lead you to the drill that created the silo. He was in one of those hallways. When Hank and Billings find Patrick, he is badly injured. He also doesn't trust either of them. Now, Hank, he goes and leaves to get a medical kit because it's pretty clear that Patrick isn't going to make it too much longer. But Billings stays, and he presses Patrick on exactly what happened, but Patrick doesn't want to give him any information. So Billings realizes that he needs to give to get, hands Patrick a picture of the outside world before all this took place that he found in Juliet's apartment. He tells Patrick, if you turn that in and you say that I had it, I'm done, I'm finished. With Patrick looking at it, he tells Billings, get me a doctor and I'll tell you everything you need to know. Hell, I'll tell you everything you don't want to know. Now, as for the people from Mechanical who are trying to make their way home safely, and we're talking Carol, Shirley, Walker, and Knox, they realize that they're not going to be able to outrun this mob. They're going to have to find a safe place, lay low, and maybe find a safer way home than just taking the stairs. And Carol has an idea. She knows an old porter named Calvin who might be able to help them out. She tells them that they're going to need a safe space to kind of just hunker down and also safe transport home. And he says it's going to cost you a lot, including items from Juliet Nichols. They agree on a little bit more of a price, and then Calvin explains that he's going to get them home via some grain bins. No one will bat an eye. The issue is Knox. He's never going to fit in those. Carol suggested they use this powerful cable and winch system, but Calvin says no, it was taken out of circulation thanks to the pact. If you use that, it's going to draw a lot of eyeballs. But in Carol's opinion, that's the only way that they're going to all safely get home. As she's trying to convince Calvin to give her the winch, Knox runs in and says, we got to get out of here, raiders are coming. Almondson's men have been able to locate them. It wasn't without help, though. Calvin turned them in because there's a big bounty on them. Carol realizes she's kind of holding the group back because she's just injured and she's old and she doesn't want to do it anymore. She also knows that Walker, having stayed inside for 20 years, that's going to benefit her. Nobody knows what she looks like. Carol decides to stay back and let the group get a head start. She no longer wants to hold them back, and she knows that her sacrifice might end up giving them some more time. And they don't want to do it, but she kind of ends up forcing their hand. Walker uses her incognito status to do just that, stay incognito. But after a little bit, Shirley and Knox are caught by raiders. At first, they're stopped by members of the silo who are acting as if they're town watch, and they try to talk their way out of it, but it doesn't work. And that's when they're taken into custody. But they're taken into custody by Sims's wife, Camille. And while Camille tells everybody, I'm taking them in and we're going to bring these people to justice, in reality, what she's doing is saving them. Because those members of the silo, they were ready to string up Knox and Shirley. They were ready to bring them justice right then and there. Camille knew that. So she handcuffed both of them, but then she took them to a safe space, a janitorial closet. She ends up kicking the guy who was in there out, telling him, if anybody comes looking for these two, you have never seen them. It's obvious Camille has something on this guy. And then she tells both Knox and Shirley that once she steps foot outside of this hallway and everybody sees that she doesn't have them in custody, raiders will come searching. So hunker down, lay low for a while. And also, there is a barricade on floor 30. She doesn't know how they're going to get through it, but that's not really her problem. Knox does ask, why exactly are you helping us? But she doesn't answer. But the reason why she's helping them is because she doesn't like how her husband's being treated. She thinks that Sims is the right man for the job, and she doesn't like the fact that the shadow ship was taken away from him. Frankly, she wants to make Bernard look bad. And the longer that Shirley and Knox continue to go without being caught, it does just that. It makes him look bad. It also makes Amundsen look bad. While Camille was stashing the fugitives, Bernard was being mayor many floors up. One of the people that day he wanted to meet with was Juliet's father, Dr. Nichols. When he called for Dr. Nichols was tending to injured members from the mob when word got out that the judge was murdered. In order to butter him up a little bit, Bernard offers him some items from Juliet's apartment that would have just been destroyed, and then turns the conversation to him helping the wounded and how that gives him hope that Dr. Nichols might be a big part of restoring order to the silo. Dr. Nichols says, what if I say no? I just want to be clear. Am I going to be punished for saying no? Because there's nothing you can take from me that hasn't already been taken. I've lost my wife, my son, and now my daughter. Let me make it clear. I wasn't tending to the wounded because of necessity to the silo. I was doing so because I was trying to reclaim some sense of professionalism. I want to practice medicine without lies and harm. All those birth controls that are supposed to be taken out but are actually left in because they're, quote, code orange. I'm the one who has to see those couples with faces of hope, and I know that that hope is unfounded. My profession is a sham. For whatever reason, my daughter is dead. And you can't control what she means to people, and you can't control what she means to me. Then he picks up the items, and he leaves. Now, the second person that the mayor wants to meet with is Lucas. Lucas has spent one day in the mines, and he doesn't look like he's built for it. Bernard gets real with him. He explains that his sentence was reduced to 5 years, but the average lifespan in the mine is 5 years. So in reality, Judge Meadows reducing the sentence was nothing more than giving him false hope. But he has a way of staying out of the mines. He knows how smart Lucas is. And what he wants is for Lucas to put together that red level relic that Juliet had. Even though he said he destroyed it, and he did smash it, he knows that you can put it back together. And somebody as smart as Lucas is the right man for that job. He gives Lucas a little while to finish the job, and then when he comes back, Lucas has been able to get through some of the files. He shows Bernard the blueprints of the silo and that tunnel that nobody knows what it leads to. Bernard tells him he's doing good, keep it up, he'll be able to stay out of the mines, and then he heads out to leave, but Lucas says, wait, there was one more file. It was a scan of a letter that Salvador Quinn wrote his wife. Bernard's eyes get wide, and he asks, what did it say? Lucas explains that it was a love letter, but then it got kind of weird. It was as if it was in code. He asks Lucas to keep deciphering it, and then he leaves, and he gets an update from Amundsen on the suspects. Amundsen tells him that an ex-raider stashed the group on one of the floors because she was concerned that they were going to get strung up. But now they're gone. And when Bernard asks, wait, why would an ex-raider do that? Who was this? Amundsen says, Camille Sims. And that infuriates Bernard because it was no accident. Knox and Shirley, though, are very much gone from that janitorial closet. They realize they couldn't stay there forever, but instead of going down, they decide to go back up. They went to go pay Calvin a visit, and Knox, being way bigger than Calvin, was able to, let's say, persuade him to give them the wench. But the wench cable wasn't going to reach the down deep, not from where Calvin was. They needed to go lower, way lower, but they also needed to do it without garnering any suspicion. That's when they decided to grab some porter outfits and head down the stairs, and it worked for a while. I mean, nobody knew that they were the two alleged killers of Judge Meadows. Eventually, though, they are seen by judicial security and told to stop, and they know that they can't go any more floors. They need to hook up the winch right then and there. Having no idea if the cable would be long enough, Shirley and Knox use their only way out, hooking themselves up and hoping for the best. They fly down the silo until they come to a screeching halt because the wire wasn't long enough. And as they dangle there, they're saved by other members of the Down Deep, who grab them just in the nick of time and pull them to safety. But Bernard, who is watching all of this from judicial security, is pissed that the two got away. Immediately, he radios Billings, because he knows Billings is down there, and he says, hey, the two fugitives are in your area. I know as a loyal member of the silo, I can count on you to bring them in. And Paul doesn't say that. He says, you can faithfully count on me to always serve the silo and the pact. Because at this point, Paul Billings knows something is not right with what Bernard was preaching. As for Juliet in the other silo, she was able to get the firefighter suit, but she wasn't able to get the firefighter helmet, so she's trying to reattach her own, but she's having trouble doing it. At one point, though, she asks Solo, hey, how are the lights on? Because the generator is flooded and underwater. And Solo tells her that IT has their own power source. It comes from the outside. That's a pretty big surprise to Juliet. She had no idea that that was a thing. But Solo turns the conversation back to the flooded generator and how water continues to rise. He asks if Juliet has any ideas, and she does, but she doesn't have time to actually execute it. And Solo really wants her to. He wants her to drop what she's currently doing, i.e. trying to find a helmet and get back home, and help stop the flooding. But she tells him, I can't do that. I gotta get back home. And Solo is freaking out a little bit. He's probably only got like 10 months until it reaches his level. It's only a matter of time before he and the entire silo are flooded completely. But Juliet is steadfast. She's not helping. She's trying to find a helmet and get back. Juliet walks out and searches for this helmet. Solo follows her, and she says, Solo's not your real name, is it? And he says, no, my real name's Cole Miners. As Solo continues to just blabber on, Juliet is starting to not feel well. She's kind of keeled over. She's lethargic. So Solo rushes off to try to find her food, thinking that that might help. Juliet, though, is favoring her arm, but she fights through it. She starts looking through rooms, trying to find the missing helmet, and she finds a notice that the missing helmet was actually taken. Before the rebellion, IT asked for it back. She then is able to find the employee directory of IT, which will give her a lead on where this helmet might be. The first apartment she goes to, she doesn't find the helmet, but she finds something way more interesting. The woman's name was Trina Samuels, aka Tiny. And there's a picture of Tiny along with a guy named Solo, and it is not her Solo. When Solo eventually catches back up to Juliet with food, he asks her, hey, what were you up to? And she tells him, I was looking for the helmet, but I found this interesting thing. I went to a Trina Samuels apartment. She was Solo's girlfriend. And Solo tries to play it off like, oh yeah, no, I haven't thought about her in a while. But Juliet calls him on the lie because he looks nothing like the picture. She grabs another piece of paper and says Cole Myers was the IT shadow. And when she picks the picture back up, Solo cuts her off and loses it, just screaming at her, I am the IT shadow. He gets in her face, he's screaming, he looks violent, and Juliet backs off. Juliet, who is terrified of what this guy might be capable of, just says, oh, okay, you're Solo. She then makes up an excuse on her not feeling well just to get out of the room and flee. She keeps on her hunt for this helmet, and you find out what's bothering Juliet. her arm is badly infected, and her condition is worsening by the second. Being a tough girl from Mechanical, though, she just tries to fight through it, but she's laboring. The good news is she is able to locate the helmet. The bad news is shortly after she does, she collapses on the floor.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.